Hello nerds and nerdettes, welcome back to the channel. We're going to have a video for you guys that I wish I watched before I got into collecting, and that's going to be top 5 things that I wish I knew before I got into collecting, or top 5 things I've learned along the way. This is really going to be for not necessarily new readers, but people that are just kind of getting into the collected editions game, and it's going to hopefully help those people or help you guys, whoever finds this type of video helpful, kind of narrow down their search and their way of thinking, and kind of how they're going to go about getting into or continuing the collected editions collecting process or hobby, whatever you would want to call it. But with that being said, we can go ahead and jump to number 5. And number 5 will of course be order how you want to order. I see so many times certain websites or order processes or whatever it may be getting rammed down people's throats, and as long as you're getting the books you want in when you want them to come in, I don't think there's any wrong or right way. There's maybe better or not as good ways of going about it, but if it fits the criteria that you want it to fit, then I say order the way that you want to order. A couple things to keep in mind when thinking of that. Everywhere typically has pros and cons. If it's organic price books, for example, that's probably your most bread and butter, good, very, very few issues, if any at all, as far as ordering products and receiving them. But there's of course other places such as Amazon, where you're going to obviously receive something much quicker than anywhere else, but the packaging is always very limited. In-stock trades, who's going to have very cheap prices or affordable prices on big books, but sometimes there will be a slight delay here and there as far as receiving your order or being notified about your order. And then there's obviously secondhand style of purchasing, which would be Facebook groups or book depositories or places that take used books. That is a great way as well. It's just sometimes the condition of the books, because they are indeed used, is a little bit untrustworthy at times. And last but not least, there's of course local comic book shops. The selection is typically going to be fairly limited because they are a store and they are only purchasing products that people are buying. But of course, buying from them and supporting local and small businesses is always a great idea and a great benefit. And it's always awesome to have a kind of local spot where you're known. And typically, if you get very comfortable with them and they get to knowing you, you can usually get some form of percentage off for just simply supporting them. But 9 times out of 10, those are really the main ways people go about ordering books and receiving books. And I don't think there's any wrong way. So that's one thing to definitely keep in mind when getting into this hobby, is order how you want to order. There's no right, there's no wrong. Just do it how you want to do it. But with that being said, we can go to number 4, which is collect what you want to collect or how you want to collect. What I pretty much mean by that is there's always a lot of peer pressure in the community as far as good stories or must-read stories, but a lot of people don't seem to understand that that list is almost always subjective and it's never concrete. There's nothing that you need in your collection. There's nothing that you must have in your collection. The only things that are deemed as must-have or needs are the things you apply that term to. As long as you like what you're collecting and you enjoy what you're collecting, that's all that matters. And same as the format. If you enjoy single issues, trade paperbacks, hardcovers, omnibuses, whatever it may be, it's your collection at the end of the day. And however you want your shelves to be laid out with books is really up to you and no one else. And at the end of the day, like I've said in one of my previous videos, a comic book or a graphic novel or a manga, whatever it may be, at the end of the day is just ink and paper. So as long as you're getting in that content and enjoying it, I think that is really the only requirement as far as your collection goes, and nobody else's opinion really matters. But we can go ahead to number 3, which is something that I wish I paid attention to before getting into this hobby, which is do not overbuy. Everybody has different financial standing or income that's coming in, and there is no reason to rush collecting. There's no reason to go broke buying a excessive amount of books, especially if you're new into comic books, because at the end of the day, you can only really read 1, maybe 2 books at a time. And if you're collecting larger editions such as omnibuses, those books are typically going to take you quite a bit to get through. So there's no rush in collecting it. As far as the rush some of us feel as far as books going out of print, books are brought back into print or reprinted all the time. If you're just patient, 9 times out of 10, what you're waiting for or wanting is going to circle back and come back into rotation. So there's no reason to overbuy. It is not a race. Just get in what you enjoy and get in what you want to read. That's really the only thing that should matter. If it's something you like or something you think you like, you should go ahead and obviously purchase it and read it. But as far as getting this huge backlog of books that you haven't read, there's no rush to doing that. There's no unobtained knowledge that you're going to suddenly obtain after getting a X amount of books or whatever it may be. It comes with time, and it's definitely a mistake a lot of us make when we were getting into this hobby, which was just feeling the peer pressure and the enjoyment of receiving a large amount of books and not necessarily thinking of the actual needs and necessity. And number 2 will be to know your publisher. I see a lot of people that collect specifically Marvel, specifically DC, or whatever it may be. When going into that, it's just best to know your publisher as far as the content that you're receiving, as well as the prices you're going to be paying. Much like ordering, there's going to be pros and cons to every publisher, 9 times out of 10 at least. And knowing kind of what you want as far as a book and the way it's put together is the best kind of thought process to get through before even jumping into collecting. And we can go ahead and go through some different editions from different publishers, and I can even go over some pros and cons. So first we'll go over indie titles. Here I have some indie titles in deluxe edition hardcovers. Usually this is kind of going to be the format that you're going to receive. Just to kind of show that off, I have Ninjak by Valiant and Ice Cream Man by Image. Same height, same dimensions, same thickness. You're getting just almost the same amount of content, if exactly. And as far as the treatment of the book, they are very, very similar. There is a slight difference for some other indie title or indie publishers. One, for example, is here, which is Once in Future by Boom Studios. This is very similar to the Image and Valiant or typical deluxe editions for indies, but you have a little bit of height on them and it is a little bit thicker as well. But as far as the construction of the book goes, they are very, very similar, minus a little bit more content and a little bit more height on Boom Studio. And then next up we have Dark Horse, which Dark Horse kind of has a few variations where most indie titles kind of have that somewhat streamlined look like I just showed off. Dark Horse does have obviously typical deluxe editions or hardcovers, standard size hardcovers, but they do have a elevated kind of edition, which is the library editions, which you can see here. This is much larger, typically a lot more content than a typical hardcover. Just to kind of see a height comparison here, you have a lot more page to your book and a lot more thickness. And that is kind of the one, I guess, upgrade to Dark Horse's publishing, is they do have library editions, and they are pretty much omnibuses, but in absolute DC style absolute edition size. So that has a lot of bang for your buck, and that's definitely something to keep in your mind when ordering from certain publishers or getting titles that certain publishers own the rights to. And just so you can see a height comparison between the library edition and the larger indie deluxe editions, there's that. Again, quite a bit of height and width for the Dark Horse library editions. And then of course we have the big two, Marvel and DC. They have hardcovers, oversized hardcovers, your kind of typical thing as far as books go. But when it comes to their omnibus editions, you're going to have a couple differences. One main difference, which does not apply to all of the omnibuses, but most, is DC 9 times out of 10, not all, but usually have much thicker omnibuses with much more content. But the prices typically resemble that. So DC omnibuses, while they have much more content, they are typically more expensive than Marvel omnibuses. Again, not always. There's always differences to prices for different rhymes and reasons, but I'm just kind of giving you a typical thing to kind of keep in mind when collecting the big two. So you can almost get a direct comparison. We have Teen Titans by Jeff Johns, which has a price of $150, a cover price of $150, and Peter David Hulk has a cover price of $125. That is kind of a fairly big difference. It's a swing of $25 for quite a bit of content. But kind of something to keep in mind as well, that these DC omnibuses, while they are thicker and you are typically getting more content, they are extremely heavy when reading. They are definitely books that you have to read from a desk, typically. And while Marvel, they are still heavy, they are still omnibuses at the end of the day, but they are a little bit easier to move around with, navigate with, read on the couch, read in bed, whatever it may be. So that's definitely something to keep in mind as well. And then we have another quick comparison, which is the indie edition omnibuses. Very rare, rare to come across a actual omnibus format indie title. But when they do, they typically kind of follow in suit with Marvel's style of omnibus. But sewn binding, hardcovers look great on the shelves. Is a great way to collect content, but obviously with how much content you're getting, you need to keep in mind the price that typically these can go for, or that you will have to pay to acquire them. But knowing kind of the ins and outs and the pros and cons to each one of these publishers is definitely good knowledge to have when buying. But with that being said, we can wrap up with my last point, which is of course to just have fun with what you're doing. If you're not having fun, then there's really no point in collecting. And I know it sounds cliche, but when you get wrapped up in the community and likes and dislikes and subjective points that people think are concrete or applicable to everything, you can definitely get quite a bit wrapped up in the minutia and the BS of kind of the comic book world. And the main thing is just to have fun with what you're doing, have fun with the books that you're reading. At the end of the day, they are just comic books that feature superheroes. While they are important to us that read them, it's mainly just a point to just have fun and just enjoy what you're reading, enjoy what you're buying, and don't get wrapped up in all of the he said, she said, subjective, weird, opinion-based conversations that always take place. If it's something that you like, collect it, watch it, read it, whatever it may be, whatever the opinion is, the public opinion or whatever, If you like it, it's your money. You can buy it, you can read it, you can do whatever it is that you want to do with it, because at the end of the day, it's yours. But with that being said, we are wrapping up the video for today. I had a lot of fun making this video. It was much more enjoyable and I feel like interactive for me filming it, because it felt like it was an actual conversation and me actually passing some form of the minor amount of knowledge that I have to someone else, which is a great feeling to have. But these are definitely things that I would recommend to keep in mind when collecting. It's not something that I think you have to do. I don't think there's anything any of you guys have to do. But I do think that it would benefit you guys much like it benefited me. And with that being said, we are wrapping up the video. So of course, as always, if you would like to join the Illuminati, hit that subscribe button down below. You can also hit that bell icon so you can get notified anytime I put out content, whether it be shorts or videos. I would also really appreciate you guys hitting that thumbs up icon. It really helps the algorithm and helps the channel and community grow quite a bit. And you can also follow my social medias, which is the same handle as the YouTube, on TikTok and Instagram. So that wraps up today's video. Comment down below if anything I said in this video, any of my top 5 have helped you at all. Also comment down below if you feel like there's anything that I'm missing, because at the end of the day, I am only one man and I only have, so much to say. So if there's anything you feel I've missed, let me know down below. But other than that, just don't forget to stay nerdy, and thank you for watching.